First of all, I'm Paul Markgraff. I am the managing editor of AFCA magazine. And what we're trying to do is help a lot of other coaches. What we're seeing right now is honestly a lot of guys getting blindsided by coronavirus and the impact that it's having on them and their programs, and they aren't quite sure what to do. And so I wanted to get a group of guys together and kind of just talk about it a little bit, see if there are little gems that we can uncover that can help other people. And the first question that I have, and this is pretty basic, but I think it's something that like a lot of us have thought of, is when you first heard that student athletes were being sent home, what was your initial reaction? What were the questions that immediately popped to your mind that needed answering right away? And Bryan, if you don't mind getting us kicked off.
Yeah, so when I first heard it, Bryan Fitzpatrick, United States Naval Academy, my athletes were actually on spring break, so they were already away. The academy told them not to come back to from wherever they were on spring break to report back to their home base. And from there, I sent them a real basic program, because we had got an update that it was going to be 2 or 3 weeks that they would be gone. So I really wasn't worried about that. That's familiar ground for us. In the month of May, as we spoke before, Paul, that our athletes get sent away and they have to do their own thing, and I send them with a little program. So they were ready to handle 2 or 3 weeks, but once we got word that it was going to be longer, that was a whole different animal. I always want to know how long it's going to go, because that's going to really depict how many programs I got to send my guys, how many weeks, so how long, and with it being unknown, it makes it a little difficult, but, I'm up for the challenge, and, my guys are motivated and they're ready to go.
Justin Lima, Towson University. So similar to what Bryan said, the biggest thing I wanted to know was just for how long. So at first, similar situation. Our guys, it was the week before spring break, and the only thing we lost was a 1 day of training. We lost Friday. And the guys were told to go to spring break, and they wouldn't be back for 2 weeks. So similar to Bryan, they knew to be away, and they've been away from us because they will typically have 3 weeks during finals break before we'll start up our summer training. So they had access to a program that was originally designed for them to be at a weight room. We were fortunate that we started using Team Builder this year. That got rolled out last year in December. So our players had, 4 full months of utilizing Team Builder, which was good because I can link videos to any weird exercises if guys forget the name of it. So that's been kind of a blessing for me. So they had 2 weeks of training to do at a weight room. And then once it was announced that guys weren't going to have access to weight room, what I was doing then was guys were sending me videos of their home gyms, because I'm pretty fortunate that about 75% of my roster had at least a dumbbell and some bands, and most of the kids actually had access to racks and barbells, and one kid even went so far as to buy. So what I've been doing from there is using the Team Builder to kind of update their lift cards, and then for everybody else, it's probably the same thing you've been seeing other people do. Backpacks for load, laundry bins as another way to get some load, towels for overcoming isometrics. And then just trying to program it out, knowing all right, we got 8 weeks. Body weight, how can you manipulate that? Tempo, reps. So, 2 weeks of an eccentric phase, 2 weeks of an iso phase, 2 weeks concentric, and then 2 weeks of concentric dynamic effort. So that way we're changing the stimulus, even though there's only certain movements you can do. You can hinge, you can squat, you can lunge, you can push. Let's change the tempo. Let's modify the reps. And again, same thing for the guys that have weight. We'll do the same movement, just modify, because not everybody's got 405 or 500 pounds at home. They've got they have access to reps, just not a big load. So we modify tempo and reps that way. Lift on a high-low model in terms of the CNS output. We'll jump and run and do that lifting stuff Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Program in some high efforts, short bursts of running that day. And then some extensive tempo work on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday with that high-low model, and just trying to get them to be outside. You know, when you look at that 2011 lockout, right? Like guys aren't running, jumping, so trying to get them to really do a lot of that.
Right on. Well, let's kind of jump into that. I mean, this is kind of the second thing that I wanted to talk about. What are some of the things that you're doing to help your guys, you know, get the work done at home? Because I mean, look, there's sending workouts, and the expectation is that they're going to do the workouts. But you know, what are you sending them, and how are you, you know, helping keep them motivated to do those things that are definitely quite a bit different than what they're used to?
Dantonio, Burnette, NC State University. One of the things that we decided to do, and we've been doing this since the beginning of winter conditioning, is starting to give the guys ownership of the process. We actually brought the program in. So the good thing is that started to prep us for unprecedented times. So once this COVID-19 thing hit, the guys were already prepared to start taking over, you know, ownership of the process and putting together accountability partners and things like that. One of the things my staff and I do, we pretty much, the platforms that we train, we reach out to those guys on a weekly basis. The guys have to make sure they're communicating back with us. We're sending out information through teamwork. I sent out a daily food for thought with the guys. I have been doing that anyways. I'm always trying to do the leadership stuff to help the guys understand that I'm always, if you're ready, you don't have to get ready. And on the training side of things, just having two types of programs like everybody else is doing. If the guys have access to weight room equipment, having that program, and then having the body weight program with the slow eccentrics and backs and all the different things. I don't think we're reinventing the wheel in that regard. Once again, trying to make sure that the guys stay active and once we get back, because we really don't know when this thing is going to end, but just giving them things to do while they're away. And then, of course, still allowing those guys to do all the change direction, speed stuff, and the plyos, because as we know, once they get back, you're going to have football coaches wanting to get their hands on them, strength coaches wanting to do their things, trying to take care of these guys, making sure that we're not putting them in harm's way is the most important thing.
Darl, Bauer, University of Houston. For me, just keeping those guys engaged has been really my main goal. You know, they can't control the circumstances just like we can't, but you know, keeping them motivated and keeping them engaged is number one right now, because you guys know how it is when you're by yourself and there's nobody there, or you know, it's just that environment where you're in the same spot every day. They just want to do nothing, and laziness breeds laziness. So it's they get into that cycle. So the biggest thing is that this constant communication, and it's not just mass text, you know, but you know, kind of splitting it up, and you know, all our staff, we try to get in touch with those guys, you know, at least by text message every day, but we're FaceTiming, you know, guys throughout the week, and just constantly trying to find out if, you know, hey, what are some problems you're having either at home, or you know, whether it's a family problem, not just talking about football and not talking about you know, strength and conditioning. So I mean, similar, I'm sure we're all doing similar stuff. I mean, you send out multiple programs, and you know, you find out what you take a you know, kind of a query of what resources they do have, and then you give them ideas. But you know, when a kid does, you know, make a piece of equipment or has a good idea, we congratulate them, we promote it, we get excited about that stuff, because right now nobody's excited about anything. So sometimes those small little victories are big for a kid, you know, and just trying to do it within the NCAA guidelines and then compliance guidelines, and not doing too much, you know, having them report back and things like that. So we're staying within the guidelines, but the engagement of them is really key. So I've actually gotten to know a lot of these kids on a personal level just as much more now than I was before.
Coach Williams, I mean, if there's like a place that I want to spend a little bit of time, it's here. Are there things in particular that haven't been mentioned that you feel are, you know, helping you connect with your athletes?
Yeah, Coach Williams, everybody calls me Coach Big John in the business, East Carolina University. I've been around a little longer than these other guys. I'm a more seasoned coach, as they say. I've got some little more gray hairs on my face. And I've had a lot of opportunity in my career to work from to the bottom to the big, from small to a little kind of deal. So the first thing we did was not panic. You know, we're really a behavioral oriented thing. Being the first year here at East Carolina with Coach Houston, you know, we were really trying to establish a culture this off season, and we were getting a lot of mental momentum. That's what we were really looking at. And, you know, through all our mat drills, through all our season, like all the other coaches, we really want to focus on who our leaders and stuff were. But what we did was, I think Coach Thunder said the same. They had a platform already kind of initiated. And so we already had a platform kind of initiated that we use for our freshman signees. A few years ago, I went away from the big spiral books that you send out to the kids to sign and stuff like that, you know, that look really good and cost a lot of money. But it wasn't very productive analytically, right? So how do you hold accountability? So we went to this software that I've liked using for a while. And I applied that same concept to our kids, to our guys. Once we got the notice that we weren't going to come back for a few weeks, I applied that same concept. We went in and put our program in that they were doing, that we were going to continue to do post-spring practice. Like everybody else, we were kind of in spring break when we got notified. But what we had created previously was small life groups. You know, you hear that a lot more of in a kind of a church setting kind of thing, but small life groups. And we had done that with all my staff, and I had about 20 guys, and my other coaches, we had all about 20 guys, and we kept that same tactic. So we reach out to them, and we really want to focus on the well-being, the safety well-being. Then we segue into the training piece. You know, like all the coaches said, the movements aren't going to vary, but so much. And I really emphasize, instead of the shifting of the blocks, I'm really focusing on the resetting of the body. And I want to take this time to reset the body, because even in strength and conditioning, we are always on a progressive overload concept. So ultimately, we're going to train the same patterns, you know, for the safety of the movement and all that kind of stuff in our rooms. Well, now we get to do things like extensions, and I'm a high volume. You know, I've got a military PT background. And so we really went to a PT fashion. Well, the accountability part is, I think it's a good time to evaluate your culture, because when you implement something, you want it to be a lasting situation. So that culture should be exemplary through this process. So guys that really love the game, we've been really focusing on our program is like, love the game, love the process of college athletic, love being a college student. So if you love those things, you're going to do the things you need to do during this ultra time. So when we reconvene, we're ready to go. And that ready to go means, like Coach say, format our plan to get them actually back physically and mentally, emotionally ready for practice and stuff, because everybody's going to be chomping at the bits. So we're really trying to pull it back and not overwhelm them with, because I give the leeway. In strength and conditioning, we're masters of a lot of different things. But everybody wants a piece of our guys. And so I try to bring the balance, you know, because we're going to demand a lot from them in our peak training times, but I want them to be able to exhale at some point, and I want them to understand that exhale. And so what we've been doing in that is talking about those things, talking about what kindles them to love. Why do they want to get up, as Coach say, and not be lazy? Why do they want to do those things? Well, because we were gaining those mental momentums. And so that's the kind of approach. And we have an endurance protocol, a lot of body weight. We do have the mechanism. We have all this stuff about, we got guys pushing trucks and guys with home gyms and guys running hills and guys 50 back pounds of feed, because we're kind of in the country kind of thing. So we have a lot of various things, but communication, as all the coaches say, is a big deal.
A lot of strength coaches, they get a certain amount of energy. I don't know exactly how to say it, but from being a part of their athletes' lives and being engaged with their student athletes, and just like that connection means a lot. You know, you're there early in the morning, you're there until late at night, being involved. It matters, you know, and it helps. And now all of a sudden all that's gone. And so, you know, I'm curious about, how are you guys dealing with that? Is that something that's been, you're okay with, we'll get back to it when we get back to it, or, is that something that you're dealing with at all? How are you feeling about this sudden, just sort of dramatic change?
I'd like to jump in that first this time, because all the guys that are on this call here are complete guys. Everybody tries to build people, and so like I got the invite from Bryan, and we're all trying to keep each other whole, like pour into each other from those kind of perspectives to fill those voids that you're talking about. We're also really good men. We live the lives that we teach to the best of our ability. So what I'm doing is building my schedule daily for my work day. And then I build in, because I've got girls who are in school and they're doing their tele-learning and online learning and all that. Yeah, I got 3 of them. And so what I do is I take a lunchtime with them and we talk about what their experience is. We go for a little walk there during the day. Try to not wake my wife up, because I'm still getting up at dark 30, fighting the sensation to text Coach Thunder about some book I'm reading. And but I'm filling those voids from building other people's kids to actually appreciating the time I get to be with my kids and my family.
Absolutely, Coach. I'll jump in there with you. I got 3 girls too, managing the home and the homeschool, and balancing, staying in contact with our guys. I think Coach hit it right on the head. So I mean, I've tried to reach out to my guys, like Coach Bauer said, via FaceTime. Just keep that connection via phone call, text message. Having a certain amount of guys I want to contact each day, having a certain amount of guys I want my assistants to contact each day. To keep that relationship going. It doesn't stop just because we're not in the weight room. These athletes depend on us. We're always the even kill. We're not on this side of the fence. We're not on that side of the fence. We're constant every day. We never change. Strength coaches never change. We're always the same, and that's why the kids trust us.
I agree with what Bryan is saying. Is we get in this thing for a reason, and having an opportunity to serve and being really good leaders. Being leaders is one of the reasons. I always tell guys, for me and my staff, number one thing is being a good leader. A good servant, then being an educator, and then being a really good strength coach is the third thing. So this unprecedented time hasn't changed. How much I serve. I actually has been given an opportunity to serve even more. As I mentioned, I send out food for thought to all players every single day, and it's amazing the feedback that we get back from the guys. We're FaceTiming guys, my staff and I, just trying to continue to stay connected with the guys. Because as you know, this is unprecedented time for all of us, but it's amazing what can happen when you can plant a seed and see that seed start to grow and start to see the relationships. And they see all kids in the background on FaceTime and things of that nature. And for me, I actually was in the process of moving and things like that. So the guys had an opportunity, to see that process, having my kids around, and it was hectic, but it also gave them an opportunity to be in my home even more. So it's always what you do with it, and serving is one of those gifts that we've been given as leaders.
Yeah, and I think just to piggyback off what Coach Thunder's saying, just really been trying to find ways of, I'm asking my guys to get over some of the humps they're trying to get over. I'm finding out guys financially in bonds because their parents have lost a job, or they're not getting paid because everything's on hold. So, that's really been the tough part is, calling them and talking about working out and how their days are going and all that, and they're dealing with real life situations. So, Coach talking about Sean his move and that's a real life situation. It might not be the same thing, but just trying to find ways to show the players that I'm asking you to get better, but I'm over here trying to get better too. Showing my workouts on social media, posting that I'm, doing talks and clinics and actually working to for when they come back and having a plan to make sure that we can do this thing and keep them as safe as possible coming back. So, you know, just that's been the biggest challenge, is trying to show what I'm doing throughout the day, so that they see that. So then when we talk, we have other things to talk about other than just, you know, the pandemic and some of the hardships they're going through, to just talk about what we're doing throughout the day to keep ourselves sharp, to get better. So when we pick this thing back up, we're ready to roll. So that's been a little bit of challenge. And then like Big John said, man, just trying to enjoy the time with the family. I got a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old, and this is the most time I've spent around them their entire lives. So just trying to enjoy that and leave that imprint on having dad around. I mean, because my 3-year-old, my little girl, you know, she asked me, am I going home? All right, and she's calling home work. So this has actually been a little breath of fresh air to be here with them, but also just trying to keep myself engaged and keep the players engaged as well. So that's been the big challenge for me.
You know, the big challenge is that's the thing that I wanted to hit up next too. You know, everybody's challenges are the same and also very different. I'm curious, you know, have you thought about it? What is the biggest challenge? And this is a question for anybody here. You know, what is the biggest challenge that you're facing right now, and how are you addressing it?
Biggest challenge is trying to figure out what we're going to do when we go back and we don't have any type of timeline. I mean, you can ask any strength coach here. Time is that's the first thing we look at when we program, when we do anything. I mean, Bryan said it at the beginning, right? How long am I going to have, right? That's time. Time is our biggest component. So we're trying to work without that. And I think that's the hard part, is sitting here trying to figure out what to do right now and then when we come back, because we're going to have a really big job coming back. I mean, and if your head coach is smart, we're the ones that they're relying on to make sure that we utilize the time that we have the most efficient way, because that's what we do. So, you know, trying to figure out those steps and map that out is really tough, because we don't know.
Yeah, time is the biggest value that we are challenged with. And like Coach just said, you know, I'm fortunate that Coach Houston values my experience and ability to train the athletes from a football standpoint. And the first thing he asks is, like, how long are we going to need whenever we do get back? And, you know, and I always go in high, you know what I mean, and to compromise. But football coaches are going to be on go. And, you know, I know Coach Bauer is going to be on go. So, you know, those are things that we're going to have to really step forward. That's going to be the challenge moving forward, is protecting the athletes. Like coaches, all the coaches have been saying, you know, those guys mean a lot to us, you know. But one thing I wanted to address in this challenge state is, you know, early in this thing, everybody was questioning about the value of our futures of our profession, right? Like, what does this mean for the strength and conditioning coach? Like, what does it mean is our value is about to increase. That's what it means, because listen to all our coaches talking and all of us saying the same thing. Our athletes are number one on our docket. And I think people are seeing the depths of the things that we do besides move weight and run hard, you know. So I think that's going to keep that relevant is going to be another challenge as we get through this life challenge, as Coach said, this life adversity that we're all dealing with. But we got to keep a positive mentality. Everything's happening for a reason, and we're going to come out of this thing on top if we keep our minds sharp, as Coach said.
Yeah, I think what will help us the best with this is, again, I feel like in terms of everybody doing like new high performance models with athletic trainers, strength coach, nutrition, and everybody being on the same side, I think this is a valuable opportunity to get strength coach and the head coach on the same board in terms of the way to look at football practice from a physiological standpoint. Like, when we look at practice, we're not looking at technique and tactics. We're not worried about, you know, how the 7-on-7 routes or the 1-on-1 routes are going. We're just trying to tell you, like, hey, when you program that drill, there's a lot of volume and there's a lot of high-speed distance. When we program that to practice, let's program it to days where it makes sense instead of like, oh, we just do 7-on-7 this day. Like, let's work to have some high volume days and then some low volume days where maybe we're doing more inside run, screen games, condensing the field. So that way, now they're understanding like, oh, hey, he's not trying to tell me what to do. Like, no, do whatever drills you want to do. You got your 20 drills that you want to do, Indy and X, Y, and Z. Let's just help you design this template that is based upon the physiological demands of what your sport requires, not the technique, tactics. And again, it's finding that fine line. Because what's the biggest challenge in this? It's the same challenge that has everybody in life is ego. Everybody's ego. Everybody's going to want to think that they have the best idea. But if we can truly put our egos inside and say, hey, for me, it's the strength coaches have 4 weeks and then it's 4 weeks of camp. It's not 4 and 4. It's got to be 8 weeks together. How can we have the sport coaches outside involved in some drills like what Coach John was talking about, whether you're outside and you're doing your mat drills with the coaches, or as long as the ball is not outside and you have your coaches involved, right? You're getting their beaks wet and they're able to be around the players. So that way when football comes, it's not like, oh, I haven't seen you guys in 5 months ready to get going, right? If you can kind of get them involved and you can let them have some influence on you, you can have more influence on the group.
I agree with what you're saying, Justin. And I'll always say I'm a firm believer that mixed programs give you mixed results. So if you have coaches doing things on top of what we're trying to do to get the guys prepared for the rigors of the sport, get them prepared for camp and season, if we're not on the same page, that's when you start to put the student athlete at risk. As I mentioned earlier, with the coaches being away, they're going crazy because with this new day and age and this new model in the summer, coaches are allowed to do football-related activity with them and things like that. So that's been one of the things we've had to navigate as strength coaches, understanding how to spend your money. Because at the end of the day, volume is volume. And if you do too much, too fast, too soon, that's what leads to injuries. That's how you overtrain guys. That's how you start to have guys start to break down. But as strength coaches, just understand how to control the controllable and then also putting everyone on the same page. I actually have a pack performance group that I speak with and I work with on a daily basis. We still text each other with my nutritionists, all my athletic trainers, all the strength coaches. We're all constantly communicating and already have started putting together a plan in place to start saying when we get back, okay, what are the things we need to do to start getting prepared for once we get back with these guys, as far as getting physicals, evaluation, all those things, once again, to take care of our number one investment, which are student athletes.
That's a great point, and it's kind of where this is naturally going. There is going to be a point where we come back, and so that you're either going to have a very short amount of time, or maybe a not so short amount of time to figure out where your athletes are at. And so what does that evaluation look like? For a lot of coaches, that's going to be something that's going to have them scratching their head a little bit. Is these guys are going to come back? I don't know what I'm dealing with. I don't know how well they've been kind of adhering to the programs. I mean, I know what our conversations have been, but I don't really know. So what does that evaluation look like when guys are finally coming back in?
You set up something vanilla in terms of on the field. You'd rather set up something on the field to evaluate how they're doing, and you'd rather it be like, all right, they smoked something easy rather than they got killed by something hard. And at the same time, you have to quantify to your coaches that, like, hey, if they smash one acute session, in no way, shape, or form does that mean they're ready for rigorous chronic workloads, right? Like, if they can do something one time, it does not mean that they're ready for the rigors of 5 days a week, 2 hours of a session. Because this is something else that I think we can take advantage of. We can raise the fact that if you look at from a structural standpoint, the summer, we're allowed 8 hours, but we're getting them ready for an in-season that's 20 hours, and 10 of those are physical. So in no way, shape, or form are we actually really able to prepare them properly, if you think about it. How are we supposed to create reserve for 5 days a week, 2 hour session practices when you can't even do that in the summertime? So that raising awareness up the chain, right? Leading up the chain that things potentially need to change. So you do a vanilla session just to make sure that you can see them moving, right? Because you know your guys and you know this type of stuff that you left off with. Follow the NCAA and the CSCCA guidelines in terms of when they come back. You're, 50, 30, 20, 10, utilize those protocols. But then again, you could have them do a jump effort, a short 10-yard run effort just to kind of test explosiveness if you felt like it. Tell them to keep it in the bank because you have some numbers on them and all right, hey, let's give an 80% effort, see where you're at. Because again, you'd rather see guys smash and do something really well than get hurt doing something when they shouldn't do it. So just follow the guidelines in place and do less in that case.
Obviously the U.S., it's a big country. You look at some of the cities that have been kind of hardest hit by this, New York, Detroit, Chicago, New Orleans, Seattle. I mean, these are large cities. And then, I live in a town that has 5,000 people in it. I look out my window here and there's nobody. You wouldn't know, apart from some panicky people buying up all the toilet paper, you wouldn't know that something's really going on. So, if you got an athlete that's coming back from where I live in Milton, Wisconsin, compared to a guy that's coming back from, Chicago, Illinois, there are different levels of, potential for infection as guys come back. How can you really bring guys back all at the same time? Is this something that you just have to sort of rely on the administration to figure out and do what's right, or have you thought about this at all?
Well, as Coach said earlier, yeah, we are always in those kind of discussions because it is the new norm, that we're dealing with. It's the catchphrase, right, of the pandemic. And we have a couple of plans or approach, but I think the number one thing is everybody's, from a liability standpoint, I think universities and admins are going to have to figure out some screenings because the coronavirus is not going to disappear. It's going to be like the flu in the near future once they have vaccinations and, medical treatments and stuff like that. But the question you ask yourself, what do you do if your staff and or an athlete catches it? So right now the standards are 14-day quarantine, self-quarantine, right? 14 days. If you have any symptoms, so you're in the middle of this comeback, the fog has lifted, we're training, we're having these great bounce practices and volume is adjusted right, and then all of a sudden somebody has these symptoms. So now, what do? Well, you got to follow all protocols. And so the way we want to do it, one thing I suggested to involve everybody in staff, like we have an opportunity to have a lot of people on our staff. And so we put an all hands on deck kind of situation for teams to be managed with, let's say, for example, the 6 feet social distance concept in our training. And we'll just basically bring those kids in based on those waves of their appropriate number that whatever the admin says health advised to do. And I think in practice it's going to have to be the same way until then. But the questions we have, the question on top of your question is, what about locker rooms? And what about living arrangements? And what about those things? And, I was sitting here thinking about Coach Bauer in Houston. I mean, he's in U of H is in Houston. It's not on the suburbs, it's in Houston. So, he's going to have a lot of challenges, I think, because he's in a super dense populated compared to me here in Greenville, so I think that, he's going to manage them appropriately, but it's going to be a different.
Yeah, Big John, you're right. I mean, it's going to be a challenge. It's just like anything else, though, is the education, and that's, from the medical community, they're going to have to make a serious effort in educating us because we're not experts in it. We can give suggestions and things like that, but I want to be educated, on exactly what that stuff means. And I just don't see a scenario where until we can get a test or we can screen them and we know that they don't have it, that you can really come back and feel confident. I'm hoping that we can screen them as soon as we can screen them and know. So when we do get in there and train or we do go practice, that we can feel confident about doing that within the safety for the players and the staff. So yeah, there's a lot of questions. You can go down the list of all the concerns and how's this going to work and how's that going to work. I mean, we don't know until we can get the solid education of here's the test, here's how long. But either way, we need to figure out a way to play football.
Yes, sir.
One way or another.
That's right.
That's a great note to end it on. And I just want to say thank you all for your time this afternoon and willingness to participate. And just again, thank you very much.
Thank you guys for jumping on. I really appreciate you guys, man.